Where am I gone? Okay. Hi, everyone. You're so welcome to tonight's Homeo Huddle. I'm Antoinette McQueenie, and I was especially excited about this one because this is what I treat and this is what I teach, and I love this. I live and breathe menstrual issues. All good, all good. I think everybody's nearly here now. No, everybody's not here. And that's okay, don't worry if your camera is not working. As long as I can see a few friendly faces, I'm happy enough. This is a massive area, the whole area of menstrual health. It's huge. We aren't even scratching the tip of the iceberg tonight. It's so big, and I really had to reel myself back when I was preparing this earlier, because I have an awful lot of information, and I don't want it to be too much, but I'm going to get into it straight away. And if anybody wants to get more information on that or anything that we talk about tonight, just get in touch, because I wouldn't mind doing another call on this one. We have a very special guest coming on in about half an hour or so, and that's Joanne Callan. And she's pretty amazing. She's got great information for us. So menstruation, female hormones, all about this. It's really a bit of an unknown entity in terms of Western medicine. It's something that has to be tamed, controlled, and stopped and restarted. And a lot of us don't know a whole lot about our menstrual cycles either. We kind of stumbled from pill to maybe fertility drugs to maybe coils, then on to IVF, not IVF, HRT. All these synthetic hormones going in to tame this beast, this unruly beast. And if things do go wrong along the way, then contraceptives are pretty much the answer for everything. You know, if you've got heavy periods, we'll go on the pill. If you've got irregular periods, go on the pill. If you have missing periods, go on the pill. What I learned myself in school about menstrual cycle was pretty minimal, and it didn't connect on any kind of level with me as a teenager. And even when I went to college, there wasn't a whole lot about it. I've had to find this out along the way. And for girls, young girls coming up today, I feel really sorry for them, because when you look on social media, there's a lot of negativity about these amazing cycles that we have. Like, there are Instagram pages called Periods Suck, and there are whole hashtags that you can follow with the most awful terms for periods, for menstrual cycles, and it's young girls that's on there posting memes, nasty memes about periods. Periods can be linked to shame and kind of maybe dirty, unhygienic, an absolute nuisance. Something that is we can take it or leave it. We don't have to have periods if we don't want to. And then on the other side, there's the adverts advertising, you know, the menstrual products. And according to those, well, you can do anything on your period. You can go skydiving, you can go roller skating, you can stay out all night with your friends and wear white. It's the most amazing thing. And if that's not working for you, then there's obviously something wrong with you. So go on the pill. So awful mixed messages for our girls. None of them really all that positive, I don't think. A lot of young girls go straight on the pill as soon as they get their first or second period, just because of all this information that's coming at them, and they don't want to be bothered with it, and they think it's going to be so much more awful than it is. And I think that's an awful shame, because I do want to talk about ovulation and what they're missing out on. Yeah, there's a lot of information we have to get out to our girls and other women. And people got in touch with me tonight and said, or over the last few days, and they heard I was doing this tonight, we're going to be talking about menstruation, preparing our girls for menstruation. People were saying, well, I'm gone beyond that now. I don't have my period anymore, or I've only got boys, or I don't have children, and or I've got girls, they've already started their periods. There's something in here for everybody, and we are the keepers of this sacred wisdom about our womb health, and it's our duty and it's our obligation and it's our right to share it with young women. Or maybe tomorrow you'll see somebody struggling in the supermarket and you know she's in awful pain with a period, and you can suggest to her that she just squats down for a second to help the blood flow. Or maybe you'll see, I don't know, your granddaughter going for some really toxic tampons, and you'll be able to just give her a little bit of information. We can share this in so many gentle ways and just turn the tide, turn that perception of what periods are really like. So just a little bit about our cycle, first of all. And most people here are going to know this, but some people won't. And maybe it'll be a refresher. So our cycle is the full 28 days or 32 days, or however long it is, from the first day that you bleed right up until the day before you start to bleed again. Because sometimes I say to people, how long is your cycle? And they tell me 5 days, because that's the only thing that they focus on. It's the bleeding part, but our cycle is the whole thing. And we have two big players in a natural cycle, and that's estrogen and progesterone. And in a natural cycle, that's one that isn't controlled by pharmaceuticals. We have higher levels of estrogen being released in the first half of the month. And that keeps us happy. That keeps the libido going. And then in the second half of the month, we have higher levels of progesterone. And that keeps us calm, or calmer. When we release an egg from our ovaries, it is 24 hours only to live. 24 hours to be fertilized and implanted into the lining of the womb, or to be released. But the kicker is, sperm can hang around. They can lurk in the uterus for 5 days. So you might have sex 5 days before you ovulate, and you could still get pregnant. Because they're sneaky little buggers. But 5 days is your window for getting pregnant. Maximum 6 every month. That is it. And if you know when you're ovulating, then you can just avoid sex at that time, or you can use barrier methods. And I'm not totally against contraceptives. I don't know everybody's situation. I used contraceptives myself when I was younger, and I didn't know anything about them. I just took what was given to me and just popped them. Had an implant. Thought I was deadly. Took about 1.5 years for my period to come back afterwards. But everybody's situation is different, and not everybody is in safe relationships, and some people do have to be on contraceptives, and that's absolutely fine. But as long as we can get information out there that they are not the be all and end all, then our job is done. It's up to people to decide for themselves. But a lot of doctors don't know this stuff themselves, so they can't share it. So that's a natural cycle, estrogen and progesterone. In a controlled cycle, or one where somebody is taking using some sort of contraceptive, say for example a pill. They take the pill for 21 days in a row, and there is heightened levels of estrogen and progestin, synthetic hormones, given for 21 days. And then they stop taking the pill and they have a withdrawal bleed. So that bleed is not a period. It's a side effect of stopping the medication that you've been taking for 21 days. So when people tell you that they've been on the pill to reset their period, to fix their period, that's not actually true. That's not how it works at all. She's just stopped it. It's like the big boys marched in. They took over. They flattened everything. So when you're taking or using some sort of contraceptive, it sends a message to the pituitary gland and tells it not to ovulate. And the pituitary gland is part of our endocrine system. I'm not going to bore you with all of this, but our endocrine system is like a string of pearls, and it's attached to, on that string of pearls is your thyroid, there's your ovaries, there's your pancreas, there's all the other hormone making glands. They're all connected. And the thing is, when you halt or stop production or messages coming out from one of those little pearls on that string, it has an impact on all of the others. And we know so many women in their 30s and 40s, 50s with thyroid issues. So you just can't shut down one part of the endocrine system without something backing up somewhere else, even if it's only on an energetic level. So we effectively shut down communication in the body. And our menstrual cycle is a really good indication of our overall health. It's something we can check in with every single month. So then the type of contraceptives that are available are the oral ones. And they work by stopping ovulation taking place. They block it completely. They thin the uterine lining so that even if an egg does get fertilized, it's got nothing to implant into. And they thicken up cervical mucus so sperm can't get in. And then coils. So there's hormonal coils like Mirena coil, and there's non-hormonal coils like a copper coil. And they work a bit differently. You may still ovulate with those, but it's somebody else trying to come in. They work a bit differently. In fact, you may still ovulate, but because it's a foreign device in the body reacts by creating a lot of inflammation around this. Trying to protect itself, really. So the uterus becomes inflamed. The uterine lining is kept really, really thin. Cervical mucus thickens up. And by the way, cervical mucus and nasal mucus are very connected. So what's happening with one can happen with the other. Often when women go on contraceptives or get a coil or whatever, sinus gets really, really impacted. And then with the copper coil, that works because copper is toxic to sperm. So you've got all this inflammation going on. The idea of that is to make it a hostile place for sperm. So when you have to use, or when you hear me using words like blocking, stopping, thickening, thinning, inflammation, toxic, like how does it make you feel? What's going on in the head? You don't have to answer, just have a little think about it. That all this activity is going on in our wombs. So a little bit about, actually, let me just see where the chat is. About ovulation and what it is. It's not about getting pregnant or not. It can be, but there's so much more to it. And when we are not using contraceptives, we probably ovulate about 13 times a year. 13 is the sacred feminine number. It's not an unlucky number. It's our number. It's women's number. And a woman over the course of her lifetime, not her lifetime, her bleeding time, which is about 40 years, will ovulate between 400 and 500 times. So the other things that ovulation does when it's not taken up with creating babies is it naturally produces relaxing agents in the body. It boosts our immunity. It boosts our brain function, strengthens our bones. It reduces inflammation. Supports our thyroid health. And a lot of these things are the things we're trying to fix in perimenopause, when that lovely self-healing function has been shut down. And then we have to go on something else to fix all of that. But maybe if we weren't being pushed onto different types of contraceptive for the 5 days of the month that we can actually get pregnant, maybe those perimenopausal symptoms wouldn't be such an issue. So that's ovulation, an amazing process in the body. Everybody complains about brain fog when they're perimenopausal, thyroid issues, the bones, they're afraid of osteoporosis, inflammatory things, you get like fibromyalgia, anxiety, because all those self-healing mechanisms have been shut down when we stop ovulation. And yet a lot of people, when they come off contraceptives, it takes them a long time to get ovulating again, if they can. Not everybody can. So when we have a bleed, or when we're ovulating, our overall energy drops by about 75%, and that's normal. It's normal to feel tired and to slow down when you have your period. We're not putting on the white clothes and going skydiving. Somebody says, I used to call ovulation day my good looking day, as my skin would be glowing, my hair silky, bright eyes. Absolutely. It's when you feel most comfortable in your own skin, you look good, because different things are happening. The collagen is plumping up your skin, you look really hydrated, you look really good, but you feel really good because your body is saying it's time to party. If you're going to get pregnant, now's the time. Sean says, any idea why ovulation can be painful since having last Baba? It can be birth trauma, it can be drugs that were used maybe to induce. Syntocin is a synthetic hormone, it can throw off menstrual cycles. Also exhaustion. So absolutely normal to be tired when you're on the period, because all this work is going on inside in our wombs. A huge amount of work. So we don't have much left for the regular things that have to be done. And really what we should be doing is resting up, retiring to our red tent, celebrating our cycle, having food brought to us. Be lovely. Instead, we have to keep working. And this society of ours really values productivity, and we're expected to really be the same as men and just keep producing every single day. So being tired on your period isn't really acceptable, but it is normal. And then you've got disorders like endometriosis, polycystic ovaries, and they're notoriously underdiagnosed because many women who do go and ask for help, it's kind of dismissed. The severity, the level of their pain is dismissed because of just a general misunderstanding, a lack of information in the medical profession. And a lot of men who've never ever had a period, or women who've had their periods suppressed for a long time and don't remember what it's like. So is there any idea why I would have a period almost every 2 weeks at times? I don't. It's a hormonal imbalance. You really need to watch your iron levels because you're losing an awful lot of blood. Iron levels and your B vitamins. That's not something you can fix yourself, by the way. You would need to see somebody about that. See a homeopath or another holistic therapist about that. I sometimes see women who are taking 8, 12 painkillers a day to deal with period pain so they can continue to work and do all the things that they have to do. That's awful hard on the liver. And they've been told that's absolutely normal, and there's obviously something wrong with them because other women are able to get on with it. So there's a lot of gaslighting when it comes to painful periods. Big issues like endometriosis and polycystic ovaries, you cannot deal with yourself. It does take a professional to do it. You can maybe deal with some flare-ups. But when somebody comes to me, I always start with an 8-week detox protocol. And that is to clear all synthetic hormones out of the body. It takes 8 weeks because it's done really, really slowly and really gently. And not just contraceptives. I detox anything that can interfere with hormones, like steroids, like inhalers, like plastics, heavy metals, chemicals. So some tips to help with painful periods for you, your child, somebody you know. That doesn't actually involve homeopathy for starters. Just some general old-fashioned advice. Number 1, relax the jaw. When we're in pain, we tend to clench, and there's an energetic line that runs from the jaw down to the cervix and into the womb. If the jaw is tight, the womb is tight. Some gentle movements. And some people actually feel better when they have some period pain for more vigorous movements. There are different remedies that deal with these two things. So some gentle movements, like some hip rotations or some squats. Squats might sound horrendous when you have a painful period, but you're not, powering through 100 of them. If you can do 5 gentle squats, supporting your back, it's just moving the muscles, it's getting the energy going. And very often pain with a period is just coming from a buildup of blood that's not able to get through, and it causes cramping and throbbing, and just doing some gentle movements helps that. It gets the energy going again in the body. I've been talking a lot about energy in the previous weeks, and fractured energy causes pain. If you get that energy going just by moving. Castor oil packs. So castor oil is great for boosting circulation, and it'll help the blood vessels to dilate. So if they're having problems pumping that blood and releasing that blood, rubbing some castor oil on will really help. People use castor oil all over the body for pain. You'll get it in the chemist, you get it in vets. So what you do with it is you put it into, dip a face cloth or a flannel into it, squeeze it out, place it over the tummy, or the back, if the pain is more in the back, put a towel over it and put a hot water bottle on top. And it's really soothing. Someone else says yoga is wonderful for easing period pain. It is. So too is sex, if anybody is up for that. So that's the castor oil packs. Rest. It's the best thing you can do. When you're exhausted and when you're in pain, you can just rest. Find a position that you're comfortable in and stay in it as long as you can. We rest the body, we rest the mind. And then the rested mind doesn't create so much pain. Drink extra water and encourage your girls to drink extra water when they have their period, because there's inflammation going on. Whether you have a coil in or not, when we have our periods, there's extra inflammatory processes taking place. And we get more dehydrated. So we need extra water when we've got our periods. Some people, they feel that their blood sugar is dropped. So watch out for that. Have small snacks or whatever, dark chocolate or something to stop that blood sugar dropping. It can make you feel weak, dizzy, can aggravate all of the menstrual symptoms. And I did mention iron earlier. You know, do you need to be on an iron supplement? If you're not getting enough in your food, if you're bleeding a lot, your iron levels are dropping. If you're bleeding very frequently, if you have a very short cycle, you're losing iron. And then our menstrual products, maybe they're actually making the issue worse, because a lot of, especially girls, young girls, are using tampons because they're seen as, you know, easy and small, compact, discreet. But those tampons are made from cotton that's probably been sprayed with Roundup, chemicals, pesticides, bleaches to make them white. And then we're putting them into the most intimate, most porous part of our body. So we're absorbing all that stuff, which will cause inflammation. Organic tampons are no better because they have organic pesticides, which still doesn't belong inside our bodies. There's loads of different options available. Some people are really, really sensitive to menstrual products, and just by changing their menstrual product to something more natural or making their own pads, period pains are gone completely. So that is definitely something to think about. Tampons to me are the absolute worst of the worst, because they're holding that stagnant energy, that blood that's trying to come down, and we're blocking it up with something that's highly, highly toxic. So we'll do a few remedies, and then I'm going to get Joanne on because I think she's here. I think I saw her coming in earlier. There's a really good section on period pain in the little Ainsworth book, the remedy kit, the Ainsworth one. It mentions quite a few actually, and it gives a pretty decent description. So it's under period pain. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's probably about 9 or 10. Oh, there, mentioned there. So that's really good, but I want to add some of those that are mentioned there. And the first one is pulsatilla. So this is, you've heard me mention, if you've been watching, okay, there's 2 messages there. Have you one to help with the sudden anger before period and a horrible mood? There are some remedies here. It is something that often needs a homeopath, but Also, PMS is not the demon, it's been made out to be. Sometimes it's the only time a woman speaks her truth and gets her house in order and sorts out the things that have been let slip for 3 weeks. So don't believe the hype about that. If it's disruptive to you and your family and very upsetting, then yeah, there's something a little bit off. Can you recommend good period pads? I'm actually going to ask Joanne to do that, because there are an issue with many period pads, but Joanne knows an awful lot more about that than me. Okay. Any other questions before I go on with some remedies? Some of the period pads are really not great, and I didn't know that until quite recently. I didn't know that there was nasties hiding in there as well. Pulsatilla. Okay, so this is for our teens who are finding it difficult, who are feeling weepy, vulnerable, very emotional, feeling like they can't cope with this thing that's happening to their body. These are all mental symptoms. You can sort out the mental symptoms. The physical ones get so much easier, or just fall away. So these girls, they need a lot of attention. They need an awful lot of reassurance that they're going to be okay. They need sympathy. They need hugs. They're weepy. Their moods are changeable. Their periods are changeable. So it could be heavy, it could be light, pain could be here, it could be there. They might have like a bearing down pain, or a downward pressure pain, maybe. The mental symptoms are more important than the physical ones, though, with all of these. They might feel better outside. Symptoms might ease when they get outside and they get a little bit of gentle exercise. Like a very gentle walk, a short walk. Or it could be that the period is late and they're just extra moody in themselves. And for us, we'll recognize it in ourselves, because this is the time when we feel like, well, nobody loves me. I have to do all this myself. Poor me. Because we don't probably get the hugs as easily as our daughters will. We don't really have people looking out for us in the same way that we're looking out for our girls. Probably feel really peevish, a bit hard done by. Why have I got to do all this myself when I've got my period? But it's not a real angry kind of state. It's more peevish. And there's vulnerability at the back of it, and a need for hugs, and a need for sympathy, and a need for someone to put their arm around your shoulder and say, "Yeah, all right, will you sit down and I'll make you a cup of tea?" And that will make you feel instantly better if you're in a pulsatilla state. And again, we might feel better outside. Get a bit of fresh air. Aconite. If you've had a shock, like in the first period, for a young girl who's just got her period, even maybe she knows what it is, maybe she's been looking forward to it, there still can be that moment of, it could be like some teeth chattering, a little bit of shakiness. I've seen it. Aconite. And sometimes when we get a very bad fright or a bereavement, periods can stop. And that's aconite too. If you can remember, let's say your daughter or yourself has been having a regular period and then suddenly nothing, just think back, did the family dog die? Was there a big fallout with a friend? Was there something that caused a big upset? They might be very cold in themselves. Ipecac is the next remedy. IPECAH. Ipecac is a remedy that we associate with vomiting, something and vomiting, coughing and vomiting, headaches and vomiting. And in this case, it's periods and vomiting or nausea. And some people do feel very sick on their periods. So it's real persistent nagging nausea. That could be the worst symptom with a period. Can't even think of food. Thoughts of food is really, really off-putting. And feel very weak in themselves. Someone said before the first baby, it was painful periods and lots of clots. After first baby, no pains or heavy bleeding. After second baby, back to heavy painful periods. Do you know what's happened to cause this? It's like what I said earlier. It could be something that was used during labor. It could be drugs. It could have been something that you were on. Sometimes periods regulate themselves after you have a baby. Lots of women would say, you know, with endometriosis that they felt better after having the baby. But then something happened after second baby to bring back everything again. So the initial problem is still there. It could be anything, and that's not something that you can fix yourself. It's a hormonal imbalance caused by something, but it can be alleviated. Would pulsatilla be good for feeling overwhelmed and unsupported approaching period? Yes. Not if that need, if there's that vulnerability, that need for sympathy, that need for hugs and cuddles, yes. If it's anger, overwhelm and anger, no, that's not it. If it's overwhelm and irritability, that's not it. But it would be a good one to try for exactly what you said there. I used to have my pulsatilla day a couple of days before my period, where I would feel that. I used to feel like, oh, I have to do everything myself and nobody's helping me. But it wasn't an anger, it was more a whining kind of state. And there is a difference. And when you're trying to pick remedies, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for those little subtle differences in the mental state and the emotional state. Okay, we'll move on. Sepia. A lot of people know about sepia for menstrual problems or for menstrual problems that came on after childbirth or some big hormonal kind of event stopping breastfeeding. Things that start happening in perimenopause, and it's a really overused remedy. So it's a really moody remedy. So if you're a teen, if your girl needs this, and it might not be a teen because girls are getting their periods at 9. I treat quite a bit of precocious puberty, where girls are starting their periods at 7, 8 years of age. So even though I'm saying teen, I mean girl. So the mood really low, really contrary, really irritable, resentful. Why do I have to have this? Why do the boys not have this? Why is it only me? Why doesn't Katie have painful periods? Why is it just me? Just really resentful towards everybody else. This downward pressure, this bearing down pressure. Joanna, I hope you are okay to hang on a bit. I'm nearly finished. I'm nearly finished the remedies. Another 5 minutes. Joanna will be with you. It's a pressure that feels better when they sit down and they cross their legs. Or sometimes really vigorous movement. And I don't particularly recommend vigorous movement for when you have your period, unless you feel like it, and then you do what you want because it's your period. So yeah, it feels better sitting down, maybe the legs crossed tightly, or moving, dancing, trampoline. Trampoline would actually help with the blood flow as well. It's not going to feel amazing for everybody though, so proceed with caution. Then for ourselves, if we need sepia, we feel really resentful towards our partners. Maybe they might be getting out of the house all day. Maybe they're not the ones stuck with kids all day. We might feel absolutely touched out. We just need to get away. We need to reclaim our own bodies. Feel very, very put upon. Could have this, probably will have this bearing down sensation, as almost as if everything is going to fall out. That's why there's this need to sit down, cross the legs, and hold everything in tightly. This is one of the prolapse remedies. It wouldn't treat all prolapses, and actually anybody who has a prolapse, get yourselves to a really, really good acupuncturist, because there is a point at the top of the head that lifts everything up, and then support it with homeopathy. That'll help to keep it up where it's supposed to be. Sepia woman needs to get away. That's really what she needs. She needs to be herself again. But when you can't do that, when you can't run away from your kids and your commitments, sepia will help. Sepia and a bath, because it's a sea remedy. So if you feel better having a nice bath on your own, the door locked and the music turned up loud, and maybe think sepia. Belladonna. I did mention belladonna on my, I posted it on my Instagram and Facebook, and any of those things that go up there, you can do a screenshot of them and just save them. They're just handy to have. So belladonna is a remedy that's often used for infection or inflammation or fevers, but one thing it has that everything has in common in belladonna, or things that need belladonna, is there's maybe a sensation of a pulse or pumping. So it could feel like the blood is pumping out, and it'll be really bright red, and it'll feel hot. And that might sound really unusual, but believe it or not, I've heard that several times. The blood feels hot. Really painful cramps. And I don't have very strong mental symptoms for that, but hot blood is enough to guide you to belladonna. Somebody said she'd love to know the remedy for overwhelming, irritability and anger. Well, this is probably it, and it's chamomilla. Chamomilla is known as the teething remedy for babies who have really extreme pain, and they cannot be satisfied. They want to be up in your arms, they want to be down, they want you walking fast, they want this, they want that, but when they get it, they don't want it. You cannot satisfy these babies. And girls and women who need this remedy have been in extreme pain for a long time. They're on their very last nerve. The chamomilla state is very similar to having drank too much coffee. You know, that feeling of like, argh. So this isn't going to encourage love and sympathy from those around us, looking after us in this state. So it's a real peevish, restless state, nervy pain maybe. So much pain, so much cramping, so much irritability, so much giving out. I use this remedy in labour as well. This is the remedy for women who are swearing at themselves in the labour ward. This is your fault. You got me into this. But it comes from being in a lot of pain for a long, long time. And if you're dealing with a teenager like this, or a preteen, unfortunately, you'll go into the same state yourself. It's the same with a baby. If you're dealing with a chamomilla baby all day, by the end of the day, you'll be in the same state. You'll be nervy and cranky. and so cross, and nothing will satisfy you except taking the chamomilla and going to bed. So the way to treat these, how many remedies to give. If somebody is in extreme pain, you don't want to leave them waiting too long between remedies. You want to see an improvement pretty much straight away. So I would go in, if you're pretty sure this is chamomilla, because you're a little person or yourself, and don't forget, it's really hard to treat yourself. That's why it's a great idea to have a buddy. So invite your buddies in, share the links of them on YouTube or whatever, because if they're brave enough, they'll be able to point out that you're cranky and irritable and probably need chamomilla. So I would go in for this type of pain and this type of mental anguish and frustration. I would go in with a pill every 15 minutes for an hour. Or put your pill into a glass of water, give it a little stir, and take a sip of that every 15 minutes for an hour. That's exactly the same as it's not exactly the same as taking the pill, actually. I'll explain that. When you put a pill into a glass of water, I think I said this before, the pill fills up the entire area of water with that energy. So this, if I popped a pulsatilla in here, which I wouldn't do on top of ginger, but if I popped a pulsatilla in here, I would suddenly have half a pint of pulsatilla water. And I would just take a sip of that every 15 minutes for an hour. And you can give it a little stir before you take a sip, and it makes it actually a little bit stronger each time, a tiny bit. So it's not exactly the same as taking a pill, but it's a great way of making your pills last. What you're looking for when you're treating somebody is that they feel better in themselves, that the mood, if it's somebody who's been really moody and really clingy and weepy and vulnerable, that she feels a little stronger in herself and doesn't need so much sympathy and so much attention. And maybe your little pulsatilla girl is okay with you heading off into another room to do something or going back to work. She feels stronger in herself. If it's a little chamomilla girl who's really cranky and irritable and cross and contrary and demanding, if she's suddenly easier in herself, not demanding anything, just feeling okay, she might still have pain, but if you can just turn down the dial on the mental pressure. That's all you're looking for. So they are the remedies. Try them out, see how you go. Don't take any more than 4 in an hour. If you've taken 4 in an hour and you've given 4 in an hour and there's absolutely no change, it's not the right remedy, go back and look at your notes. And don't forget, in these little kits, there's only 42 remedies, or in the blue boxes, there's 36. We have 6,000 remedies at our disposal in homeopathy. So just because you can't find the right remedy from your kit doesn't mean the right remedy isn't out there. You just need to go to a homeopath and have a consultation done. Someone says, love to know my thoughts on why girls are getting periods so young. I think there's many factors. I think processed food, I think the overuse of plastic, I think contraceptives everywhere that's gone back into our water stream. Everything has changed so quickly in the last 30 years. Girls have lost 2 to 3 years of their childhood. 100 years ago, girls weren't starting their periods till they were about 16, and now 10 is considered normal. Yeah, they're just some of the things. So when I'm treating precocious puberty, as well as working with the parent on a really good organic diet, I would detox all of those things I've said: contraceptives, steroids, plastics, chemicals, heavy metals. So they're very young. They're very young to be starting that. They don't need the ovulation process at the age of 7. We only have so many eggs. So the earlier you start, the earlier you finish, and then you don't have what you need to support you in perimenopause. So it's a bit of a mess, and we can't just accept it as normal, this thing as normal. Just because something is common doesn't mean it's normal, you know. So do if you got little girls, do watch out for early breastfeeding, or maybe you know, hair or whatever, oily skin. A good place to start is the liver. To start cleansing the liver, looking at the diet, and oh my God, this vegan stuff that has come in, and I'm a vegan, this plant-based crap that has come in is full of non-food. It's full of absolute rubbish. And I've heard of so many girls who have switched to vegan, young girls, because they want to save the world, because they're being told it's the right thing to be done, not by parents. This is the agenda that's coming down the line, but it's changing their cycles and changing them really, really quickly. What would I consider early breast development, pubic hair, etc.? Well, like there's some kids who are doing this at 4. So obviously that's very early. You want it as late as possible. The other end, 9, 10, even later. As I said, like 10 is considered normal for the beginning of periods, and puberty, the signs of puberty start about a year earlier in girls. 10 is considered normal for this stage. Any other questions? So Joanne is going to come on and talk about how to prepare our girls for our first periods. And I do think if they start well and they have a positive experience and they see positive things at home from us, then they develop a more positive attitude themselves. How to slow it down. I would start detox and start balancing hormones. You can't do that yourself, but do look at the foods, processed foods, get them out as quick as possible. Get onto good quality, organic, if you can manage it at all, organic, and lots of veg, lots of fruit. Some people are starting, kids are starting with bio, and the answer to that is deodorants and antiperspirants, and of course that's just keeping toxins inside. And for girls, if you're putting an antiperspirant on here under the arms, you're blocking toxins in an area that's very, very close to breast tissue. And for ourselves as well, we shouldn't be bothering with this. You know, natural stuff if we have to. Remember, Dee was saying last week, this is gut issues. This is a gut issue, and it's also liver. So when you help to cleanse the liver, you can get herbs to do that. Don't do that yourself. Get somebody else to do that for you. There's loads that we can do. There's always loads we can do. And even if your child has already started their period, it's not too late to still look at diet and things like deodorants. And what Dee was saying last week, what are they putting on their skin? I read before that we are poisoning ourselves 120 times before we step out the door in the morning, because we've used shower gels and shampoos and moisturizers and makeup and just all this stuff coming at us that people didn't have 100 years ago when they were starting their periods at 16. Okay, this is, like I said, this is a big conversation. I would love to continue it at some stage, and maybe we will in a few weeks or something. Have a think about all the stuff that has started to churn up here tonight, because I know you're all going to be going, oh my God, don't panic. Okay, we've just been armed with loads and loads of information about things that we can do, and this is really positive. It's really, really positive. And now I'm going to bring on Joanne before we're all starting to fall asleep, because she's absolutely amazing. I'm going to get you to unmute there, or maybe I can do it.
Yeah, me.
Let me.
I've had my actually I kept these on as I was on the screen as part of the whole hormonal balancing conversation. I would absolutely consider different types of glasses. So I don't need glasses for sight. These are red glasses that I wear in the evening once the evenings start to get dark, and if I'm on technology or anything like that, or even just natural lights in the house, I wear these, but I'm going to take them off now because they're kind of not my normal look, although they do give a nice amber tint to everything. I've been known to go out and look at the moon the first couple of weeks of having them, and kind of first night I was like, the moon looks very orange this evening, and then realised that it was because I had amber tinted glasses on. So thank you, Antoinette, for inviting me, and I certainly loved some of the chat there. And yeah, it is a big conversation, as you said. You know, it's massive, and it activates lots within us on lots of levels. And as Antoinette said there, you know, it's about what we can do. It's about empowering ourselves. We need to have the facts, we need to have the information, we need to not be naive, we need to not bury our head in the sand, and then we can kind of move from that space. So there's lots there, and I'm delighted to be with you all this evening. A few familiar faces there as well. So
sure there are. Joanne, I've been telling everybody about you all week. Will you please introduce yourself and tell us all about you and what you do?
Okay, well, I'll keep it short and sweet, so you'll get the kind of condensed version. I get confused myself sometimes. I talk about the different hoodies that I wear. So tonight I've got a Change in Cycles hoodie on, so I'll stay focused on that bit. I'm a holistic therapist and wellbeing coach. My journey into that was certainly hugely influenced by a polycystic ovaries diagnosis in my early 20s. And I guess as Polycystic Ovary Awareness Month, that's quite significant. And again, for the conversation that we're having here. So primarily that was as a reflexologist. I also trained as a relaxed kids coach, and I'm the relaxed kids trainer in Ireland. So we have a few other relaxed kids coaches on the call here this evening as well. So it's lovely to see those. And then in July 2020, as kind of part of that whole journey and something that had been on my radar for a number of years, I had the space. The space was given to me by the circumstances that we all find ourselves in there. And yeah, Siobhan, I'll chat about the glasses, thank you. Or I'll send some links across to Antoinette as well. So the general kind of space was that July 2020 offered an ideal opportunity for me to put some wheels in motion that I had wanted to for some time, and to really bring menstrual education into the schools that I was working in, to support women, to support girls, whilst I very much welcome some, not all, of the conversation that is happening around menopause at the moment, and the awareness and how we're now having conversations, and it's seen as more, you know, sort of acceptable to have conversations around menstruation. I'm really passionate that we start those conversations when they're needed. Prevention is always much easier than cure. And we know that women and girls menstruate in their teens, in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s. So I'm like, let's have these conversations at the right time so that they can support our life, our wellness, and all aspects of ourselves. So I also trained as a moon mother, have my moon mother attunement, Mayala and Miranda Gray, in May or June of 2016. And that had been also a big part of my journey as well. So as part of setting up Change in Cycles, we purchased a company called Moon Times, which was founded by a lady called Rachel Crowe. And Rachel at that stage was on a cancer healing journey, and she had Moon Times. She'd been making and selling reusable menstrual products for the previous kind of 20 years. So from the early 2000s, she was quite a leader in that space. And Change in Cycles we purchased Moon Times as well. So we still sell reusable menstrual products. Our stocks are quite low at the moment, and we're kind of taking a revisit of what direction that's going to go. I know Antoinette said she was going to ask me about the period pants, and yeah, I'm currently looking at how we're going to offer those. We were very it was a great opportunity this year. We had a local women's centre had contacted me and bought quite a lot of our stock to support their women. We know there's an initial investment for reusable menstrual products, particularly good quality reusable menstrual products, and the ones that we produce are organic cotton, wool, bamboo and hemp are our fillers. So there's no chemicals or no toxins in the pants themselves. There is some work to be done to kind of streamline those and make them right. That said, I have had the same pants and pads for, I actually bought my own products from Moon Times before I then took over, before we took over took over Moon Times. So I had purchased products from them, which was a lead into actually purchasing the company. And that has been quite the journey. So we run mother-daughter retreat days. I have just finished, well, we're sort of through the first year of our mentorship training. So I've 4 mentors that have been training with me for the last couple of years as well, or for the last year, and they're kind of continuing that journey at the moment. We do mother-daughter retreat days. We do online preparing for puberty program. We do, so lots of the questions actually that were kind of coming up there are stuff that we cover in that. It's a 4-week program, and I'll have the autumn and kind of winter dates out for that. In the next wee while, we kind of like to get the GAA season finished off and various different things, that there's a wee bit more availability for parents in the evenings. And then we do programs in schools as well. So yeah, that's a bit of a kind of a snapshot of changing cycles. What I'll say, aware obviously that you've been on the call for this evening, and there's lots that we could talk about here. I have quite a few good blogs on my website that can support some of this space as well. So if we don't get to cover everything, there are some on changing cycles, and also some on try the alternative as well. And we can share the links to those. And we've got some good info there that'll hopefully be able to support and help as well.
Can I just ask you, Joanne, go on as long as you want, because this is being recorded anyway. It's going to be up on YouTube. People can watch it whenever they want. If somebody here was interested in training to be a mentor, how would they go about doing that?
Yes, well, at the moment, I think the next intake for that will probably be this time next year. I did the pilot, started September last year, really wanted to feel into that and kind of see what journey we would go on as a group of women, and to make sure that our values were aligned and that we were all kind of, and with it, I guess what we found was definitely that a lot of our own stuff came up. So when we're in that immersion space of menstrual educators, Donna Ashworth, I don't know if anybody follows Donna Ashworth, had a beautiful poem there. She writes a lot of poems online, and she had a poem the other day about the witch wound, and about being seen, because it's one thing kind of having these conversations in private and behind closed doors, but when we are stepping out into our community to have conversations, that can bring up a lot of our own stuff. So I wanted the mentorship space to make sure that that the women that I was supporting felt supported and were able to go through that journey. So it's not a journey that can be rushed, I don't feel. And yeah, the first year moved a lot of stuff for us. I learned quite a lot through the journey. And it's now, we're kind of allowing that stuff to land and allow me to support those new mentors to bring programs and that to their community. So that will be something that we'll do for this year. So it'll be like the implementation. So I guess what I've learned from it is that it will be at least a 2-year mentorship in different ways. Another question coming in there, it is currently held in Newry, halfway between Belfast and Dublin, so reasonably accessible. And it is, I feel, again at this stage, an in-person space is the right space for it, because there is lots there, and it's about connection, and it's about community, and it's about support, and it's about vulnerability, and it's about learning, and it's all of that stuff that I think was much more potent, perhaps, held in person, and the connections were made in that space. So
sounds wonderful. No, somebody had sent me a message on my phone to ask you that.
yeah.
So, and I know how you work. You don't rush things. You like it done right. and that's but there's a lot of personal stuff that comes up. We can't support somebody else if we haven't looked at our own stuff. That takes time.
Yeah, and the vulnerability around it, and the fears, and the all of those things that kind of can come up when we're being seen. You know, I spoke with a teacher recently who said her mother was in the hairdressers locally, and you know, I was the topic of conversation, and you know, and Joanne Callan, and like it wasn't enough that she was doing all that relaxation stuff with children a few years ago, but now she's talking to them about periods and what do you think, and and then this lady who was in her 70s said, well, I think it's just about time, and isn't it great? And we should all be doing more of it. So, you know, there's it but and I've been comfortably in that space of maybe being kind of the center of conversations, thankfully very supportively, and my local community have been incredibly supportive over the years of everything that I've kind of brought into the space. But I also recognize that within family systems and communities and various different things, you know, I recognize the reason I can do what I do is because I had a very positive menstrual support journey at home. And I guess that's also the part of this conversation this evening, whereas even some of the women who've trained with me, you know, there's a lot of healing of their own journeys to have to do before they're in this space to maybe support others.
So how soon would you suggest speaking to children about periods, boys and girls, or do you treat them differently? Or
the younger conversation, I mean, we have a beautiful book on moon times actually written by Rachel, that was just to clarify as well, you'll hear me talk about changing cycles and moon times. So moon times is the web shop, and changing cycles is our programs and all that kind of stuff. So they're both linked through from Changing Cycles community website, but they are yeah, you'll hear me interchangeably using both. They're actually under the same entity. They're just, one is a trading as name and one is kind of the educational side of stuff. So we have a book, Why Does Mummy Bleed? Is the most beautiful book, gorgeously illustrated, and a children's bedtime storybook. And that is probably suitable from 2-3-year-olds. My nephew and niece have it. They've had it for a few years. And it's a really lovely introduction. And what I often hear from parents and from mums is, you know, there's no privacy in the house. The children get into the bathroom, they're following you in, they're noticing, they're asking questions. It's all there. They, you know, they want to know what's happening and what's going on. So it's a really lovely way to start that conversation. What I would find then for boys, you know, that's probably kind of not the only conversation that you need to have, but it certainly does a lot of the good work for the next few years. They know what happens, they know what it is, and that's the basis of it. And one of the things I would say to parents, and again, we can all relate, you know, there's an age where all things bodily functions are funny, you know, poo, pee, farts, all those kind of things, and everybody finds them hilarious, and it's all very easy conversation, and it's all easy to have. And then there's an age where it's not, and it's awkward, and it's strange, and it's kind of, you know, we've been impacted by the world around us and picked up on all the things that are there. So I personally feel the younger the better, in age appropriate, relevant ways suitable for each child. And I know that's a bit of a kind of a mouthful of stuff, but you know, different children will need different things. And very much it's about getting comfortable yourself. I personally use the phrase, in all of this space, I believe parents and home need to be the leaders, not the followers. And that's the followers of television, the followers of peers, the followers of whatever and other influences that there are on our children in their lives. So another phrase that I use is, by the time you think they're ready, they're more than ready. I see the same children in lots of different settings. So I might see a child come to see me with their parent. I might see the child in school, and I might see the child in youth group. And I see 3 different children. And, you know, because that's the nature of who we are. We adapt and we change to our environments. And the conversations that a child might be having in school, and a conversation they might be having in youth group, and a conversation that they might be having at football or in the home, they're all different. And I think that's the space where we kind of say, well, before I think they're ready, is it you or is it them that aren't ready to have the conversation? And then how we have it. We have I'll come back to that question again in a second. So yes, we do, as mentors, we do programs in schools and for youth groups and various different things, and open to any conversations as to where they can happen, or collaborating in an area, or however that kind of looks or needs to be. And so we have yeah, that would kind of be my gist on it. It's never too young to have age appropriate conversations, and we can start having little bits of information that is relevant, that are significant, that are done in the right way. And often it is about building your own confidence and your own doing your own healing journey as well, in order to have those conversations. We have another really lovely, I actually have a blog with the different books. In prep kind of for today, this evening was a lovely prompt for me to get the blog eventually written that I've wanted to write for a while, and it covers some of the books that we have available on changing cycles and the different ages, and kind of a bit of a gist of what the books are about. We have a lovely one called Pink Lemonade, which is funny and very witty, and it's kind of the diary entries of a 12-year-old who is charting her cycle and writing down how she feels and who she's insulted that day, and how wonderful she feels another day, and how much she wants to lie under the pillows another day and avoid the world. So it's really lovely, and it's very funny and witty, and she talks about her cat being her savior at times when nobody else understands her. And so it's a very gentle introduction into the emotional side of it. It touches a little bit on the physical side of it, not majorly, to be honest. And then we have Reaching for the Moon, which is another beautiful book by Lucy Pierce.
I have that. Lovely.
Pierce's book. It's beautiful, and brings in again a lovely gentle awareness and the sacredness of the female body and connection to nature and kind of the world around us. And then we also have My Period by Millie Hill. Birth Like a Feminist. Millie wrote that book, and it has a little bit more information on the physical aspects, and so I probably look at it in sort of the upper age of the preteen teen space as such. Again, suitable for that, probably aim for that sort of 11 to 13 kind of space, whereas some of the others I would definitely think, yeah, they're kind of, as I said, Why Does Mummy Bleed? 2-3-year-olds, a lovely little story, very nice little pictures, and talks about nests and birds and various different things. It's lovely and gentle and soft, and about mummy needing some rest and a nice hug and a cup of tea. And so it introduces that kind of space of mummy needing to slow down as well. So it's a lovely, lovely little language within that. And then moving in Pink Lemonade, Reaching for the Moon, and then maybe My Period. And then I recently released a little pamphlet book, and it's on our website as well. And it is the questions that the girls in primary 7, which is our finishing school year here in the north, they're usually 10 or 11, but they finish primary school at that stage before they move into secondary school. So I was doing some programs with some of the local schools and gathered up all the questions that the girls asked me and answered them. So they're literally in their language. What's the white gooey stuff in your pants sometimes? Why, the questions that they had in their own words, in their own language. And I have answered those questions as accurately and as best I could. So that's a great little resource, if I do say so, based on the wisdom of 10 and 11-year-olds who had questions and who had picked stuff up in the world around them. That's the reality is that they are exposed to a lot more than we often choose to think that they are.
What's the name? Where can people get those books, Joanne?
Moontimes.co.uk or changingcyclescommunity.com. So I've popped that on as my screen name for this evening, so everybody should have my website there on the bottom of the screen for my name. And the blog is there to follow. It is the top blog because I only released it today, so it's there to refresh you on any of the details of any of the books that I've talked about there.
Okay, brilliant. I'm just putting up the names of books here as well. What about people who have daughters now approaching maybe the age of first bleed? Is there anything they can do to, besides the books? Have you got like a top 3 tips or anything like that?
Yeah, one that often gets missed is that parents or mums will often say they've given their girl pads, and they've seen pads, they kind of know what pads look like. They haven't actually given them the opportunity to practice putting them on. So that would be something as very obvious as it sounds. That can be really helpful, because they're kind of like, oh, what is this? Also, one of the things that I like to remind them, because they hear blood and they they've no concept of how much blood, how little blood. An egg cup is usually about kind of the average over the 2 to 3 days, as certainly when they start. Again, obviously, I know that can vary, but it's a good place to kind of say, look, this is not like a massive, you're not going to have loads of blood gushing out of you, because yourself, you hear the word blood and you're going to bleed, and it's going to be like wee, or it's going to be, it's going to be like urine, it's going to be that space. So I find an egg cup is a great kind of to say, look, here you go, there's an actual visual, that's how much it's going to be.
Oh, you're going to be sore.
If you're co-parenting, or the girls spend a lot of time in another home, maybe with dad, then making sure that dad's in on the conversation as well. Obviously, if dad's at home as well, that's important. Even more so important if they're spending weekends with dad or with another family member or whatever, that there's a conversation there, and that they know who their point of contact is in that space. Should their bleed start. That is something that also can be really maybe not missed. Maybe mum's had the conversation and hasn't always just necessarily translated it into, oh, it might happen when she's not with me, kind of thing. And lots of mums will obviously be prepared for that and think about that. Thinking about swimwear, that's one of the questions I often get from parents as well. Girls now, it wasn't necessarily an issue, even maybe for many of us when we were growing up. We might not have had the same level of activities, sporting activities, whatever. Many of them maybe possibly stopped around puberty anyway. Now we know many young girls are involved in sports and swim clubs, and the area that I live in has a very strong swim community. So a lot of the girls swim. I have a blog on that as well. It kind of covers some bits. It's just worth kind of having in your own head. We generally don't bleed in water. The pressure difference means that it actually, we kind of won't bleed. Like if you get into the bath, bar, if you think about this, there's some obviously sometimes TMI conversation here, but if you think about it, you get into the bath, there may be blood in the water when you first get in. That's often because there's been some blood on the pubic hair, and that maybe tinges the water a little bit. Generally speaking, you don't kind of have blood flowing while you're in water. So that can help with the swim space. There is period swimwear available. Again, considerations around some of the toxic chemicals and things like that. I'm kind of always a fan of sort of, looking at what's going to work in a particular situation as well. And, sometimes that is the choice that needs to be made. However, more often than not for young girls, unless they're spending a lot of time on deck, like at lots of swimming lessons or something like that, where they're going to be out of the water a lot, and even then a dark swimsuit will typically be okay. And what can also be helpful though as well as that space is actually body confidence, and that's where the conversations happen. Because if they're not worried, it's often the thing happening is one thing, but it's the concern and the worry of whatever the thing happens is. Whereas if they're feeling okay and comfortable with their body, that can be helpful as well. And add to that conversation, period swimwear can be very expensive, so maybe maybe opting for.
Sorry. Can everyone just check their that they're muted? Somebody's unmuted somewhere.
Possibly. Yeah. So the kind of swim short swimwear, there's a few more options there, but just kind of have a thought about what that's going to look like if you have a daughter who swims a lot or plays any kind of sport. Thankfully, some of the clubs are considering, you know, changing from white shorts and various different things like that. That might be a conversation you want to have with your local football club or your local sports teams or whatever in advance of that for your daughter. And that can be a space where women can advocate for girls and make life just that little bit easier for them. Also, maybe if they are playing a lot of sport, I tend to find that children and young people in today's world fall into two categories. Either they're doing every sport going or they're doing no sport at all. There's kind of not much middle ground when it comes to physical activity for our young people. It tends to be on the extremes. And we know that professional footballers and professional sportswomen are bringing in more, you know, there's the awareness in terms of their training around their cycles and various things. That's not happening for our girls in a lot of cases, and it's not happening for amateur sports women. So thinking a little bit around that, and again, I've an article, a blog written on that, and that can just bring a bit of an awareness just to help them to know that, you know, maybe their game might, you know, they might just not score as many points as what they might do another day, and if rest is possible, or maybe they do a you know, they miss a training session that week if there's a match, so they're not overdoing it, and various different ways of bringing that consideration in. Yeah, and just, you know, as Antoinette said earlier, having positive experiences. I had a conversation with Father Brian Darcy a few years ago, and one of the things that he said that really stuck with me, and it came back into my head when I was kind of thinking about what I might share this evening, was that things didn't get taught at home, they got absorbed. And, you know, I think that's a very wise phrase from Father Brian, along with many others that he has offered over the years. But that space of, yeah, you know, they're absorbing where we're at, what's, you know, what conversations we're having. Check in with your own beliefs and your own kind of prejudices, your own experiences. Are we projecting them on to the girls? As Antoinette said earlier, you know, just because something is common doesn't mean it's physiologically normal. And it also certainly doesn't mean that it's natural. So it's making sure that we're not projecting too much of our own experiences into their experience in advance of them even having their own experience. So it's like, and that said, the female pain body, you know, is a very true space. So a lot of the journey can be an ancestral, you know, space there as well. And some of the pain that shows up around menstruation is often coming from that female pain body space. Yeah, the practicality, I think that for me, that practical one has always stood out, is the pads, just actually letting them practice putting one on, getting, you know, that they know what it, they don't, not just that they know what it is, they know actually how to use it. And yeah, the rest is really a journey. It's about, rather than it being one talk, you know, we were brought up with this idea. Oh, why that's happening? Oh, there we go. It should be okay. It's just got a warning there that my battery wasn't on, but it was just that the switch wasn't switched on, or my socket wasn't plugged in. And yeah, we have that, you know, we were brought up with, have you had the talk yet? So look, you know, I'm guessing that everybody on the call here is pretty forward thinking with their conversations. It's not one talk. It's, you know, it's a series of small everyday conversations. So I don't have children, but I have a very close relationship with my niece. She's 19 now, and I would have spent a lot of time with her in her, you know, preteen, teen years. And, you know, just things like, oh, I have my period today, so I'm going to go to bed early tonight. You know, not, I'm going to rest a bit more. So positive language, not, oh, I'm busted and exhausted, I'm going to bed. Being proactive with the language. She would have also seen me, I have my kind of bleed celebration ritual is buy myself a bunch of flowers and a delicious bar of dark chocolate. So she often would have seen me purchasing those, and that space of just those normal conversations. I wasn't saying to her, oh, this is what you do when you have your period. It was just, this is what I'm doing right now. And I think as well, then conversations, introducing them a lot of people will talk to them about periods, miss the conversation of the menstrual cycle. It's not just your period, isn't just the piece, that there is a cycle. And simple language around that is just to say, boys' hormones are like the sun, girls' hormones are like the moon, and boys have a 24-hour clock and girls have 28-day clock, and that helps them to also relate into the different changes. And then the other conversation I would have with girls is teaching them about their seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And those kind of concepts, because they relate to those, and especially at 8 and 9, they can relate to that kind of idea, and you can sow those seeds for 13 or 14, trying to kind of have a conversation with a 13 or 14-year-old about summers and seasons and things like that. Not all of 13 or 14-year-olds are going to be open to it at that stage, but it still sounds quite nice and quite interesting for younger girls are interested in that kind of language and those kind of conversations. So ideas, I just noticed a question coming in there about ideas of celebrating their first bleed. I mean, culturally, that happens in so many cultures across the world, and even in those cultures that did, some of it is certainly, they're on a path to westernize their thoughts rather than stick with their own kind of traditional practices. I think it's about making it what is right for your daughter. I mean, if your daughter is not into crystals or flowers or things like that, well then, she's going to absolutely just want the ground to open up and swallow her. If you do menarche kind of traditional crystal, woomy kind of space, she might just want to go for a cinema date or whatever. It's I think, yes, we can look back on what happened in history and happens in other cultures, and we can look at them lovely, and we may want to bring some of that in and see the importance of it, and that would be ideal. It would be lovely if we could, and yet we have to meet where we are and modernize some of those traditions in a way that suits where we're at. So perhaps purchasing a piece of jewelry or something that she would like. I think that for me, that would be the top piece of advice. Make it about her and meet her where she is, rather than bringing in what you would like it to be or what we see in the perfect book kind of model type idea of it all being very ritualized and all of that space. Just help her to celebrate who she is and to celebrate, but on her terms, in her way. Otherwise, you're just going to have an eye-rolling teenager going, the most awkward moment. What's more awkward than not having a menarche ceremony is having one that's like has you sitting there feeling horrific for the day that it takes place. So yeah.
We kept it pretty low key as well, whereas I would have liked to have menstrual blood smeared on our faces and out howl at the full moon. We went for pizza.
Yeah,
that was it.
Yeah, I think that's you have to meet where they are and think about where maybe we're on our journey. We may have wanted to have now the 42-year-old Joanne may want that. Would the 12-year-old Joanne have wanted it? Probably not. Would she just? I think we have to find our way into these spaces, and we can't project and that's throughout the whole teenage years. We have to allow them to be where they are and come to these spaces. Sow enough seeds that maybe howling at the moon and war painting your face with menstrual blood is a really cool thing to do. But don't force them into doing it.
All right, that was amazing, Joanne. There was so much information coming there. I hope everybody got a chance to write it down. Is there anything else you wanted to say? Everybody obviously go and check out the books. One thing just struck me as you were talking, Joanne. Everybody here is forward thinking and we all want the best for our kids, but sometimes we just don't have the words. We don't have the vocabulary, and I think by reading some of those books it'll really help. Reading your blogs,
Yeah, it is the language, and our Preparing for Puberty program helps with that as well, because it's, I find that for parents at this stage, there is very little support. When babies are younger, there's maybe parent and toddler groups, or there's those kind of spaces where things get bounced about and we kind of pick up. The teenage space becomes it's a lot more nuanced, and there's a lot more concerns about judgment and the whole parenting space is often filled with judgment, isn't it? Who did what's happening. And there's not just always the opportunities to kind of maybe have conversation with a friend's mum or something like that to say, well, actually, what would happen, because you've generally got listening ears. So the Preparing for Puberty program certainly offers a space for us to have that, to get comfortable with the language. And yeah, that's a really important point as well, Antoinette. I would say, with any of the books, any of the resources, have a read through them yourself first. Don't kind of just hand them over. And if that's a space, if you've a daughter who's, say, 7 and you're not ready yet to have those conversations, or you don't feel she's ready or whatever, prepare yourself, and then you'll start to sow those seeds into the space. So get comfortable with the language, and yeah, even naming body parts and using anatomically correct names for those to yourself, so that then you're able to use them confidently, because it is so not our culture. We don't have it in our everyday world. It takes work and comfort to get to that space.
Yeah.
Actually, a really good book as well. We don't have this on Moon Times. However, a really good book is Sarah Ockwell-Smith's Between. Between, yes. And that might just answer Siobhan's question there a wee bit. Between is a really good book. Sarah Ockwell-Smith, some of you might recognize her stuff. She's gentle parenting, gentle eating, gentle discipline. So she's very attachment. She actually has a fabulous book due out that challenges lots of stuff in the next wee while. It's called Because I Said So, and it's how as a culture and a society we're basically childist, and how that has impacted how we show up and how we are and all that kind of stuff. But Between is her book for that kind of 8 to 13 space, and she covers a lot of topics in there: social media, phones, like puberty, all the stuff that's relevant in that space. So that's certainly relevant for both boys and girls. And then another book that I would recommend is, particularly for boys, actually, though, parents of any young people, is a book by Richie Sadler called Let's Talk. And Richie Sadler's doing the current RTE documentary. I haven't seen any of it because I don't have a TV. However, he's running that. He's running a series of programs at the moment with Kitty Maguire was on it doing the menstrual education stuff as well. His book is aimed for probably 15 to 17-year-old boys. Where I feel it fits into this conversation is that I think it's a really good resource for parents to use to get a grasp of the world that their young people are kind of in, and the types of conversations, and exactly as Antoinette said, to get comfortable with the language yourself and to get comfortable with the topics, and to examine what is my response to this, what are our family values around this, what are our space, how are we going to deal with that? Because it's not enough to say, well, we're just not going to talk about it and we're going to bury your head in our sand. Agreeing or disagreeing with whatever the topic is, we need to know why we're doing that and how we're going to have another alternative or have an open conversation. So I would definitely recommend his book, and then decide whether you think it's good. And again, actually, a piece of advice that a parent shared with me that her son had actually said was, Mum, what really should have been happening was that you give me my sister's books and give my sisters my books, so that we knew what was happening with each other. So that there's another space within all of that too.
Yeah, brilliant. Did you see those other messages there, Joanne? There's one that was just sent to me. I'll just read it. It is, I took each of my daughters out for a special lunch, just the two of us, and bought them a small piece of jewellery to celebrate it. It was made very positive for all of us.
Yeah, and I mean, there is so much within who we are as women, body image, the whole eating disorder space, all of that. You know, it's a massive conversation, and when we can feel comfortable with our bodies, then you know that helps in so many spaces. And menstruation is clearly a huge part of the puberty you know, of the girls' puberty journey. And when we're okay with that, I think that's a long way to being actually okay and celebrating how amazing our female bodies are. And that then becomes a buffer for some of the other stuff that comes down the line at us. We could have a massive conversation about, you know, the food, and the cosmetics is a big one for me. I mean, on my own polycystic ovary journey, removing parabens from just shower gels. You know, I'm not a big cosmetic person, never really was. But even things like that, nail polish is another big one to look at. There's lots of endocrine disruptors in nail polish. So if your daughter, and I know most of them are, a lot of them are into nails and all that kind of stuff, definitely looking at nail polish. And if possible, looking, there's certain nail polishes that are 3-free. So the main kind of 3 main chemicals that are in a lot of nail polishes aren't in them. Not ideal either, but I'm a fan of kind of, you know, reduce what we can, and count chemicals, not calories, is another one of my kind of phrases. So let's look at where we are with chemicals and how we can support them in that space as well. So yeah, there's lots in this. So thank you all for being here this evening. Antoinette, thanks a million for the opportunity to connect and to share. I know there was a question about my funky glasses. These are from a brand called Blue Blocks. They've actually rebranded to Bon Charge, BONCHARGE. I'll send links for them. They do blue light blocking ones for during the day and stuff as well, that aren't the red lights. They also do light bulbs, red light bulbs, and various different things. But it's certainly moving into that space for candlelight and dropping, getting our bed lights in the evening, and getting that natural melatonin stimulation happening there as well.
Joanne, that was absolutely huge. I knew this was going to be good, but you're just amazing. I have so many things to think about. I never thought about the whole sporting thing, because our kids are not into sports. So I never thought about sport for girls, white shorts, all of that. But a black swimsuit and the fact that we don't bleed in water, that's blown me away. That's such great information. Thank you. Really.
Because people can spend a fortune on the period swimwear,
yeah, and they don't last long.
It's so, and yeah, the kids are growing, and it's not necessary in all cases. I mean, again, you know, it may be in some cases. And as I said, I live in a strong swim community, so the girls are swimming, you know, a lot, and it may be an option in that space for them, but it's not always necessary, especially if they can be comfortable in their bodies.
Yeah. Okay, I will be posting all of Joanne's links, and this is going to go up on YouTube tomorrow. There's amazing stuff here, so please share it out to your friends who might benefit from it. Or yeah, I'm sure everybody got loads. Do follow Joanne on her Instagram pages, and again, I'll post all those links.
Oh my goodness, Claire. Yeah, I just see Claire's comment there. I paid €40 for period swimwear that weigh a ton. Yeah, it's a tough one. So yeah, we can, but again, they're marketable and they're buzzwordy, and they kind of think that they solve a problem rather than actually thinking there's not really a problem here to solve. You know, it can be, yeah.
Never even thought about it. Okay, let me stop this.